The subway doors didn't just close, they hissed. That sound, that final mechanical exhale, was the exact moment Elias realized his day was about to turn into something he couldn't control. He stood on the platform, his briefcase pressed against his leg, watching the red taillights of the train fade into the dark tunnel. He was 28, he was desperate, and he was exactly 12 minutes away from the job interview that promised to pull him out of the cramped, damp basement apartment he'd been calling home for 3 years. He checked his watch. 8:42 a.m. The interview was at 9 a.m. sharp. If he waited for the next train, he'd be late. If he was late, he was out. He had two choices: stay and hope for a miracle, or run. He chose to run. Have you ever noticed how the smallest decisions often carry the heaviest weight? Elias bolted toward the exit stairs, his dress shoes clattering against the concrete. He hit the street level, winded and already sweating. The city was a maze of morning traffic, a gridlock of yellow cabs and impatient pedestrians. He saw a shortcut, a narrow alley behind the old textile building. It would shave off 5 minutes. He didn't think about the mud or the uneven pavement. He just saw the finish line. He sprinted into the alley, his heart drumming against his ribs. He was halfway through when his foot caught on a discarded metal pipe. He didn't just trip, he went down hard. The impact knocked the breath out of him, and his briefcase flew open, scattering his resume and reference letters into a puddle of oily rainwater. He scrambled to his knees, his palms scraped, raw and bleeding. He looked at his documents. They were ruined, ink bleeding into grey pulp. He stood there, dripping wet, clutching a handful of useless paper. A woman standing at the mouth of the alley was watching him. She wasn't laughing, but she wasn't helping either. She just looked at him with this strange, pitying expression that made his stomach drop. Why do we insist on pushing when the path is clearly blocked? Elias didn't answer her gaze. He gathered the mess, shoved it back into the bag, and kept moving. He was angry now. Angry at the train, angry at the alley, angry at the ground. He arrived at the office building at 8:58 a.m. He looked like he'd been through a war. His suit was wrinkled, his knees were muddy, and he was shaking. He walked into the lobby, and the receptionist looked up, her expression tightening the moment she saw him. He was in the room for less than 3 minutes. The interviewer didn't even ask to see his resume. She just looked at his muddy trousers, his shaky hands, and the wild, frantic look in his eyes. She told him they were looking for someone who could handle pressure with composure. She thanked him for his time. He walked out into the cool morning air. The city was moving, completely indifferent to the fact that his entire future had just evaporated in a span of 20 minutes. He sat on a bench, the silence of the park feeling heavier than the noise of the traffic. He thought about the train. If he had just stood on the platform, if he had just accepted that he was going to be 5 minutes late, he could have called ahead. He could have apologized. He could have shown up composed. Instead, his desperate need to win had cost him everything. Have you ever wondered if the obstacles in your life are actually warnings, not challenges? He started walking home. It took 2 hours. He didn't take the subway. He walked past the alley, stopping for a moment to look at the metal pipe that had ruined his suit. He kicked it, watching it clatter against the brick wall. It felt hollow. He looked up at the sky, the clouds finally breaking to let a bit of sunlight through. He realized then that he had been living his life like a sprint. He was constantly running, constantly rushing, constantly trying to force outcomes that weren't meant to be. He had been so focused on the 9 a.m. meeting that he hadn't noticed he was running toward the wrong building, in the wrong city, for a job he didn't even want. He only wanted the money, and he only wanted the money to escape the life he was too afraid to change. Is it possible that failing is just the universe's way of forcing you to stop and look around? When he got home, his basement apartment didn't feel as dark as it did that morning. He sat on his bed and took off his ruined shoes. He felt a weird, quiet sense of relief. The pressure was gone. There was no interview to prepare for, no train to catch, no reason to run. He went to the kitchen and made a cup of coffee. He sat by the window and watched the feet of people walking past on the sidewalk. He saw a man trip on the curb, drop his coffee, and swear under his breath. He saw a woman stop to help him, and they started talking. He watched them laugh about the spill. He thought back to that moment on the platform, the train doors closing, the sound of the hiss. If he could go back, would he try to catch it? Would he run again? The strange thing was, he couldn't answer. He liked the man he was in that basement, calm and quiet, watching the world go by. He didn't like the man who ran, who panicked, who fell. He realized the missed chance wasn't the interview. The missed chance was the opportunity to live a life that didn't require him to run himself into the ground. He finished his coffee and walked to the door. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a suit to wear or a boss to impress. He just had a day in front of him, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't running. He walked out the door and turned in the opposite direction of the train station. Have you ever stopped to consider what you might find if you just let the train go?